Hey, today we're going to go over Chapter 6, Creating and Sorting and Querying a Table. This again is found in the Cashman Series Office 365 textbook, and this is in Excel. Our goals today is to create and manipulate a table, delete and duplicate records, add a calculated column to a table with structured references, use a VLOOKUP function to look up a value in a table, use icon sets with our conditional formatting, and inserting a total row. And again, we'll go over these objectives at the end and make sure that we've covered all of those, and you'll understand them at that point. Very first thing we need to introduce is a table concept inside Excel. We've used tables before in Word. They're very similar in nature in Excel, except in Excel you have a little bit of extra features. We also are going to call a table a database. And in that database, we have rows and columns. And our rows are going to be considered a record. And that might be a list of friends, a group of students in a class, inventory list of songs, club membership roster. And each of the columns are going to be called fields. And those fields might be album name, song title, artist, or it might be like in a inventory list, it might be the price, it might be quantity on hand. So the columns are going to be called fields, and the rows are going to be called records. So just think of that as a little mini database within our Excel. Okay. Today we're going to be working with bank account managers. We're going to be working for a bank, and at this bank we have multiple branches, and we're going to be rating our our account managers at each of the different banks. This is again on pages 1 and 2 and as well 3. And remember, page 2 and 3 also show a completed sample of what your Excel worksheet will look like when you're finished. On page 6-4 and 6-5, the planning part that goes into process or into play when you're making an Excel worksheet. Remember, when you sit down with whoever wants the worksheet that you're making for them, that you sit down and draw it out and kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like before you start working. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of hassle trying to figure out how to add or change or something. It's better to design it right the first time. Okay, on page 6, we're going to start. It says open and save a file. So we're in our SAM account. Click on the start button for the SAM 6 textbook project. You're going to download your file, which is this one right here. And then also don't forget in your reading, if you need to follow along on the electronic textbook, your reading is right here, the book that I'm reading from. It's also located in your textbook here. Okay? So the very first thing it wants us to do is it wants us to open the document. I've taken the liberty to download it already and open it. So here's the document that we'll download, or the Excel workbook that we'll download. And then steps number 2 and 3 says to maximize the file. And then step 3 says to save it. So we're going to click on File. I'm going to Save As. If you're using the cloud, save it in the cloud. If you're using on your PC, use a folder that you'll remember, and I'm going to use my Documents folder. And then here it tells us to change it to SCEX6 Bank Account Manager. So I'm just going to put the word Bank Account Managers here. And I'm just going to put an underscore in my name for right now. And save it. And this allows us to manipulate and edit the data. Now, when you download the folder, sometimes you'll download the Excel workbook, you'll see a yellow bar across the top, and it'll have to enable editing. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this data and turn it into a table so that we'll be able to use some of the features of a table. Remember, we talked about a table being like a little mini database. We're going to be able to filter and sort automatically. It's going to be able to insert structured references. We'll also have a header row when we create scroll down large tables. We'll be able to see all of our headers. Okay, so page 6-8 says format the range as a table. Step number 1 says zoom to 110%. So I'm going to click on my view button, and I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to type in 110% so that our table is a little easier to see when we make it. Then Bullet number 2 on step 1 says select the range A8 to F20. So A8 to F20. And then it tells us to click Format as a Table button. Now that's located on our Home tab in our Styles group, and then it's right here, Format as a Table. And it gives us a whole bunch of different choices. Step number 2 says to click the blue table style medium. Now our table styles are in 3 different groupings. There's light, medium, and dark. And ours said table style blue medium 14. So this would be in the medium section. Blue is pretty easy to find. And then we're going to look for medium 14. Blue table style medium 7. Blue style medium 14. Okay. Now the next thing that's going to pop up is ask us if our table has headers. We have employee name, branch, specialty, account value. So those are our headers. And bullet number 2 and step number 2 says, if necessary, click my table has headers. It's already checked for us. And we're going to click OK on step number 3. And it creates our table for us. The neat thing also with the table is it gives us banded rows, so it's a lot easier to read our data. We're looking over here, and who's supervisor number 10 right here. We can look on the dark line and go all the way across Julia Ray. This one has a 9.5 or an 8 or whatever, and we can look across because the colors help our eyes. Okay, page number 9, step number 1, to wrap text. Wants us to do a couple of things because our supervisor review that we're just looking at is a number, but look how wide the column is, and it just doesn't look very good. So change the width of column F to 13. So I'll click on here and go to 13. And then it wants us to make this row a little bit taller so that we can see the supervisor review when we wrap the text. So it wants us to change the row height to 30. I'm having a little trouble getting it to go right, so I'm going to click on here and click on row height. There we go. Now I have the row height. Oops, I did that wrong. Row height of this one, 30. And now we can wrap the text. So it wants us to click on cell F8 and wrap the text. And that puts the supervisor review where we can see it easier. Okay, page 10. Page 10 says click anywhere in the table and display the Table Tools Design tab. So we're going to have a design tab up here that we are not able to see unless we're on the Table Tools or on our table. I'm clicked on Supervisor Review, so our Table Tools Design tab is right here. Then it wants us to type in managers as the table name. So here's our name box. So we're going to type in the word managers. Hit enter. And now we've just named our table managers. Okay, now it wants us to remove duplicates. Apparently we have a duplicate in here. It's Javier Nunez's. So we need to remove the duplicate. Sometimes we have duplicates because somebody else is typing in the data for us. Sometimes we type in the data and get distracted, and we come back in and we start typing the data again, and we don't realize that we have a duplicate. So we're going to go ahead and remove the duplicate. So we're going to click anywhere in the table. I'm going to go up here to our Tools tab. This is steps 1 and 2 on pages 10 and 11. I'm going to click on Remove Duplicates. We're going to make sure I'll select all is checked. All of them are check marked. Click OK. And it's remove that one duplicate of Javier Nunez. Okay. And we've done steps 1, 2, and 3 on pages 10 and 11 on removing duplicates. The next thing it wants us to do is insert some new rows and records into a table. So it says select cell A20 right here. And we're going to type in the data found on the bottom of page 11. There's 3 new records it wants us to input. So let's go ahead and do that right now. You can always fast forward this, put me on pause while you're typing the data in. One of the things I want to point out is as we type, if we have another name in our same column of fields, then it's automatically going to populate it here. So we don't have to type the whole thing in. We can just hit tab and it'll go ahead and put the rest in. And then of course we have Avon. We've used this as a branch several times. I'm going to hit tab here, and then I'm going to keep on typing, and I'm just going to use tab as needed. Now when we get to the numbers, here they're already pre-formatted for us, so all we have to do is type in the numbers And we don't have to hit the 0.00 because it'll automatically put it in there. And then our supervisor review, 9. And we'll go to the next field, and we're going to continue on. Okay, now we've typed in all of the data on the bottom of page 11, step number 1, and then it tells us to click on the Home tab and click outside the table to deselect it on page 12, the second bullet there. And it says add new columns to the table. So now it's going to have us add new columns. So it says change the column of with G to 13. And then it wants us to type in G8 rating. If you'll notice, it's automatically going to format it as a table again. It's in bold. And then I'm going to hit enter, and it automatically makes that field area the same as our table. And then it wants us to do the same thing for H. It wants us to do H to 13. And then we're going to type in loan commission. Hit enter. And it tells us to use the text wrapping if necessary, but we don't need to. It automatically did it for us. And then column I is going to be also 13. And we're going to put new money commission. And hit enter. So now we've created 3 new columns for our table. And now page number 13, step number 1, wants us to center across a range. Now we're not merging and centering, we're going to center across a range. So A7 through I7, we're going to right click the cell. We're going to go to Format Cells. I'm on page 13, steps 1 and 2. And I don't know why I'm getting an hourglass. There we go. And then click on Alignment. And then right here, Horizontal Alignment, we're going to center across the selection. And then click OK. And it centers it across the selection. We didn't merge and center, we centered across selection. Okay, that's the step 3 on page 614. And the last thing we need to do on that step is the third bullet. It says change the height of row 7 to 30. Change row height to 30. There we go. And that takes care of step number 3. Step number 4 says click the save to save the workbook. So I'm going to click the quick access button. This is a little picture of a disk. Automatically saves it. So we've got it saved. Now we're on page 14. And now we're going to use a lookup table. Now, there are 2 types of lookups that we commonly use in Excel. One's called an HLOOK, and the other one is called a VLOOKUP. And I'm going to read through this part of the book so you'll understand. The 2 most widely used lookup functions are HLOOKUP and VLOOKUP. Both functions find a value in a lookup table and return that corresponding value to the cell. The HLOOKUP function searches for a value in the top row of a lookup table or an array of values, and then returns that corresponding value in the same column. It is used when the table direction for field of data is horizontal across the worksheet, so HLOOKUP, horizontal lookup. The VLOOKUP function searches for a value in a column of a lookup table and returns a corresponding value in the same row from the column that we've specified. It's used when a table direction is vertical or down the worksheet. The VLOOKUP function is used more often because tables are vertical, as in this module. Okay, so let's look at what we're wanting to do. So on page 15, step number 1, change the column of L and M to 14. So this is where we're going to put our lookup table. And then it wants us to type in an L1 rating table. And then it wants us to change the font of L1 to 18 and bold. So bold 18. Select L1 and M1, and it wants us to do the same thing we did a while ago, center across the selection. So right click, format cells, horizontal, center across selection, and click OK. Now in steps 5 and 6, it wants us to type in review and rating in L2 and M2. And then in I8, we want to format paint the data from here up to our 2 rows here. So we're going to click on I8, and we're going to click our format painter. Now remember, format painter is just like dipping our paintbrush in a paint bucket. So this is the paint we want to use. So we click on our format painter. Now we have the paintbrush because we've already dipped it in the bucket, and we're going to click and drag on L2 and M2, and it paints with the same color or font formatting as we had here. Okay, so we just did steps 1 through 7 on page 15. Now, step number 8 on page 16 is going to be the data that we're going to type into our table here. So in cell L3, we're going to type in 0, 7, 8, and 9. And we're going to go to column M, M3, and we're going to type in poor, fair, good, and excellent. Now, to give you an idea of what we're getting ready to do, is we have our ratings right here. So what we want to do is, if they have a 10, we want it to be excellent. If they have a 7, we want it to be fair, and so on and so forth. But instead of changing the ratings here and typing in the words, we're going to have it look it up. So if we change the rating, it'll automatically change the word rating here. So that's a cool thing with VLOOKUP. All right, so let's start. G9 is where we're going to put our first formula, and we're going to type in equals VLOOKUP on page 16, step 1. Our lookup value is in F9, because that's where we want to see and change that. And then our array is going to be in L3. So I'm going to type in L3, and then I'm going to hit the F4 button to change it to an absolute reference, or you can type in the $ yourself. And then the rest of our array, because it's a range, is going to be M6. L3 to M6. If you notice, it highlights it in red on our screen here. So this is our array. It's going to look for the review here, our lookup value F9. So it's going to look in cell 10 and match it with one of these. And then it's going to return a rating. Okay. So the column that we want it to look into is column 2 to put our array, our result. And this is column 2. That's what this 2 is for. And then we're going to close our parentheses, and our VLOOKUP is done. We'll hit enter, and then it automatically puts in all of these for us. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so now we're going to add a calculated field to the table. Okay, now calculated fields allow us to calculate data. And we're also going to use an if function. So if it's a certain thing, then it's going to return that value. And if it's not, then it's going to return something else. So we're looking at commission. So if the supervisor has something, then we're going to give them a commission. If they don't, then they don't get a commission. Okay? So let's look at the if function for our loans. So let's see here. Let me get in here. Step number 1 on page 18 says click cell H9. We're going to start our formula. We're going to click accounting number format. And we're going to make sure it's set to 2 decimal places. So counting 2 decimal places, we are good. And we'll click OK. And then we're going to start typing in our if statement. So equals if. I'm on step 1 on page 18. And then parentheses. And it tells us to hit the bracket button here and then find the step or loans. But I've discovered that it's a little quicker if we just type it. I forgot the open bracket here. It's still not working. This gave me trouble the last time I tried to do a demo on it. So let me do a little bit of difference here. Delete this out and start over again. So if, and then where the loans are right here, the specialty here, equals loans. Oops, why is it here? Excuse me. If the specialty if parentheses, logical test, specialty. There it goes. All right, let me start this part over again because it gave us a little bit of grief. So we're on page 18, step number 1, and it tells us to double click and do some other things. So just follow along with me. Sometimes they make some changes to the way programming is before they publish the book. So we're going to type in if, and then we'll put our parentheses, and then we're going to click specialty here, because if what we're wanting to do is if this is a loan, then we want to give this person a commission. But Carrie Bruce on this line has a CD money market account. So we're going to look here and say, no, they really don't have a loan. The first loan we have is Julia Day down here. But if their specialty is a loan, then, so we're going to click equals loans in the text. If it's a loan, then we're going to click on the account value and we're going to multiply it times 0.0025, which is 2.5%. We're going to give them a bonus or a commission. But if it's not, if in our case it's not, it's CD, not loans, we're going to say 0. No money, no commission. Okay, and click OK. And there it goes. It fills everything in for us. Okay, so you see if there's a loan, it does give commission. All right, so that's step number 2. And remember, instead of double clicking, we just clicked on the specialty to get that to fit in for that step number 2, where it says specialty. Okay, so now we're on page 19, and we are going to put another one in for the new money commission. So new money commission is I-9, and we're going to put in a if statement again, equals if, parentheses, and this logical test is going to be the same thing. If it is here, so we clicked on the specialty, and then it's going to be equals, and this time it's loans again, comma, 0, because if it is not alone, or if it is alone, we're going to give them 0 permission this time. But if it's something else, so if it's false, then we're going to give them a commission based on how much their account value is. So account values, and then times, and then 0.0002, and then close parentheses. Okay. So if it is a loan here, it gives them commission. If it's not a loan, if it's false, then it's going to give them a different commission in this column. Enter, and then it gives it. Okay, so those are the two if statements that we're using and determining their commissions. Now, check your answers. Make sure they're matching what's in the book on page 19. And then we're going to do a conditional format now for our supervisor review. So another method to present information visually is to display an icon set. So in the supervisor review, we're going to use icons, and we're going to use the traffic signals, or we can use traffic signals, circles, flags, bars, or arrows. And then icon sets are going to include 3 or 4 or 5 icons depending on how we want to do our ratings. You know, like good, poor, and bad, or whatever. But this particular one, we're going to use 4 because we have excellent, fair, and good, and poor. So we have 4 different ratings. So F9 to F22 is where we're going to put our ratings in, or our icon set. And then we're going to click on step number 2 on page 20. We're going to click on New Rule under our conditional formatting. New Rule. And then we're going to click on the icon sets here, format style. Click on icon sets. And then we're going to look for the 4 traffic lights. I'm on bullet number 2 on step number 3 on page 21. And we're going to find our 4 stoplights. That's red to black. We don't want that one. There's the 4 traffic lights, so we'll click on that. And now we have our 4 traffic lights, and it's asking us what our values are going to be. Now it's set to %, so the very next thing it tells us to do in our step number 4 is change it from % to numbers. If our numbers are a certain thing, then display the different icons. Okay, so we changed them to numbers. Now this is where we go in and define what's going to be green, what's going to be yellow, what's going to be red, and what's going to be black. Okay, so if it's a 9 or higher, then we want it to have a green light. So I'm going to type in 9 here. If it's an 8 to a 7.99, we want it to be yellow. And if it is a 7 to 7.99, we want it to be red. And if it's below a 7, then we want it to be black. Okay, that is the 4th bullet in step number 4 on page 21, inputting those values. Now on page 22, it's just to click OK. So now we have our stoplights built in here. Okay, so it's a little bit more visually appealing than looking at the numbers. We can look at all the greens, we can look at all the yellows real quickly, as opposed to our brains translating the numbers into something. The colors are a little quicker. Okay, so we're going to insert a total row, and inserting that total row is the next step, and it'll be the last step in what we do today. So anywhere in the table, I'm going to click. We're going to go to our table design, and then there's a button right here in our table style options. We'll click total row, and you notice it adds a total row here. So we're almost finished. The last part it wants us to do is it wants us to go to E23, and it wants us to put in a total here. So it wants us to use the sum value. So we're going to drop down, and because it's a total row, it already has all this information. Another advantage of a table. So we're going to click on the sum. That's steps 1 and 2 on page 23. Now in step number 3, we're going to finish at out. It wants us to put a supervisor review, and we want to use the average. And it wants us to change it to 2 decimal places. So while we're in here, we're going to go to our number here, and we're going to decrease the decimal to 2. There's another way to do it, but that's the quickest way. Okay, And then it wants us to create a loan commission for sum here. So we're going to click on that cell and go to sum. All right, that completes everything. We're going to click on our save button, and that completes steps on pages 1 to pages 24. Again, our objectives: we manipulated a table and created it. We deleted duplicate records. We added a calculated column to a table and with structured references. We used the VLOOKUP function. We created a table, so we have a VLOOKUP to determine our ratings. We used an icon set for our review with our conditional formatting, and then we inserted a total row. Thank you very much, and have a good day.